Hi, greetings again from the friendly Morissette Family Flute Studio. Um, I talked about making an initial sound the other day, and the next issue up is learning how to put the instrument together. And this is really, really super important because some of the ways that flute players do it right now is really damaging and can really affect the response of your instrument. So, first off, please, for the love of God, never call this a mouthpiece. It's a head joint. And what you do is remove rings because I've seen way too many scratches just from having rings and twisting it in. So, head joint, never hold it by the lip plate like this while putting it in because the silver solder that holds this lip plate on is delicate, really. It's not meant to be, so always teach them to hold the head joint below the lip plate. And they can grab it as strong as they want. In fact, I kind of like a strong grip here. Next up is your body. Shout out to Straubinger Flutes. I really love how the mechanism works, and I think it's really beautiful to look at. So I have them hold it by this tenon right here. So they cover up the brand of the flute. And then here's the important part. They don't want to do this into it. You want to put it in as straight as humanly possible. So I'll try to move my hand down a little bit because any bending, there we go, any bending of that end of the head joint is going to affect the response. So don't have them, do it, no. Have them twist it in gently. And what I do is I say, put it all the way in and then go like that. My flute kind of has a marking on it, but it's really, really subtle since I just got a clean oil adjust. But he actually did burnish a mark for A440 and A442 because he's that awesome of a flute maker. Okay, now comes the tricky part, the foot joint. This is the one that everybody screws up on because how the heck do you hold this without smashing the keys? So this time, you actually do get to touch the keys. You take your thumb and you cover the keys very gently like this. Make sure that you have a nice grip and that your hand right here is not squeezing the rods. This is a terrible picture, but that's the best I can do. So my thumb is on the keys and these fingers wrap around just to the body. They stay curved so that the rod here does not get bent at all. Now again, it's really hard to get this leverage holding way, way up in the tenon and way, way down here. So I have told flute players in the past to actually put their hand on as if they're playing it. And then very gently, look at those shaking hands tonight, just put it on. And your beginning flutes are always going to want to line up the rods, which doesn't work. For me, my comfort zone is lining up this bottom rod exactly with the trill key. And that just totally works for me. So now you have a perfectly put together, beautiful flute. I use a Bo-Pep finger rest because I've battled tendonitis all my life. But they've got this beautiful flute, and now they've got a beautiful sound on the head joint. But how the heck are they going to do this? Because I have so many students who do the beautiful sound on the head joint, but then once they start holding this monstrosity, it all goes away. So I'm actually going to remove my finger rest so that you can see the bare flute. And what I tell the kids, based on their hand size, I have pretty big monster hands. Grandma said, look at those piano hands the day I was born. What I do is, here is your first finger where you go, but this is the first key that affects, this moves this key. So what I do is I have them line up their index finger right with that key, and now see they have their hand like that. The thumb magically goes to the thumb keys, and then if you just fold down your hand like you're curving it, boom, you have your fingers on the thing. It takes a little while for them to do that, and I have actually had them hold it gently like this just to get the left hand right. And I have them get the left hand before they start putting it up on their faces, because then they're going to be like, ah! Okay, so now they've got the left hand. Now comes the right hand, and I think the right hand is more tricky because so many flute players, like, they'll play like this, but take the flute away from your hand and look how gross it looks. It's like, bleh. So you want to try to form this beautiful O with your fingers and then crush it a tiny bit. So it's kind of like this nice oval. I put my thumb. Okay, here's that. An open hole flute is so convenient for these because you know exactly where the keys are. I put my thumb, here is, well, the F key. And so I hold it and I put my thumb right under the F key. And I do it so, gosh, still not used to using this camera. I use it so just this part of the thumb is resting on it. Not like that, not like this, just right the tip of the thumb. And you can adjust that depending on hand size. I have a friend with super small hands and she has to do all kinds of crazy stuff, turning in her head joint and everything. I might want to interview her. That would be a great idea. Go, Emily. Okay. So I put my thumb either there or teeny tiny bit over, so between the F key and the E key. And then I just curve my hand in kind of a, there. I don't go like this. I just curve my hand. Now, arthritis has started to kick in, so my pinky is never perfect because 38 years old bifocals, let's start the arthritis too. Yes, I know, I'm as young as I act, which means I'm 12. So now they've got this holding on. Their thumb is on here. They've got their keys. They've got their right hand, and they're holding it. That's good news. But now, bringing it up. So here is the most important part of all flute playing. It actually cured my tendonitis when I could barely play in my freshman year of college. I actually had to kind of scale down my college auditions because I couldn't play enough to practice them. So I played much simpler material than I had hoped to. So they've got their happy flute position. But here you go. You cannot have them sit forward and go like this. My back hurts thinking about it, and it just like kind of went ouch right now. So what happens is you have them turn to the side about 45 degrees. And then, so that's where their legs are. So you can see me right here. But then I'm going to hold up my flute like this. And so I have kind of like a triangle. And, oh gosh. Again, it's the computer screen. I'll have a diagram for you soon. But they need to turn, and then they do this. It makes it so much more comfortable for them, and it helps with band seating because you can turn the chairs accordingly, and so you won't have all these flutes stabbing each other. This also prevents this kind of thing, and that's why I have them hold all the keys when they're first putting it up. And it is hard to, maneuver this thing. I still, putting it together, just didn't put my embouchure hole. There we go. Okay, so I've got that, and I'm turned. But moving this thing, it's big, especially if you're like in 4th or 5th grade. My poor little guy in 4th grade, he's so tiny that this thing looks like an alto flute in his hands. But he is such a sweetheart, and he is determined to kick this flute's ass, and he really does it. And please pardon my language. He does great. So he's got his keys. Everybody's got their keys. They're turned. You can actually have them practice controlling the flute by having them do like circles like this and then go like this, just so that they can realize they're maneuvering, and then put it up and make them look upward first when they do that, because otherwise you're going to get this. And you don't want that. Every single band has one of those, and it drives me crazy. When that happens, I make them go and look up. And when they look upward like this, their whole body. And then the other thing is you make sure that your body is perfectly straight. And we work on that. It's actually a little bit of yoga. I was taking a yoga class and she said head over heart, heart over pelvis. And that just helps you keep a straight line on your spine. And then that just continues all the way through your head. So turned, put it up. And then they get to do the kiss and roll and the conch if they need it. See the previous video about full lips versus, not so full lips. And then set your embouchure. I usually like to use a D because lots of keys. So kiss, roll, conch, set your embouchure, and here's a D. And that was a terrible sounding D. But here I am with this. Watch this. And I was still using the kiss, roll, conch and everything because I maintained my flute exactly where it was. You can see that. Just sitting with a curved spine. It's a total difference. And so teaching them to control this is the hard part. So I have had them do things like this and do things like this when they're in clear spaces. And it really does help. And then move it back and forth. And then hold it up to their lips. And then I've done stuff like keep the left and right fingers down and then lift the thumb, because that makes a difference. Because going from D down to your thumb, this is a tricky balance. And we talk about that. But for now, you put the flute together correctly. Don't, for the love of God, let anything bend here. And if you see a student doing that, oh my gosh, tell them that I will spaz in upstate New York, even if you are in somewhere like San Francisco. Like, tell them that they will hear me scream. So it's the same thing taking it apart. You put your thumb on. You don't let any rods be taken. You just twist it off as straight as you can. And then you swab it out, which I'll show you in a second. But I take it apart first. And then remember, on the tenon. And then on the head joint, not on the lip plate. And you pull it very, very nicely. And then, so what I do is I put it in my case first. And then I get my swab cloth. Okay, so I get my swab cloth and I award every single one of my flute players at the beginning with a plain white handkerchief. You can get them at Target, you can get them in department stores. Targets are pretty good. They're not expensive. They're not very thick, but they don't need to be. They just need to be absorbent. And then the other thing is the cleaning rod. Lately, plastic cleaning rods have come in and I love them because the metal ones are so risky to scratch the inside of the body, and holy cow, that'll do something. So the first thing I do is I have to teach them to string it as if it were a metal cleaning rod. So we take one point of the handkerchief, we thread it through the hole, and then I tell them to make kind of like, I don't know, that looks kind of like a duck head, but I give them about that much. And then the next thing I do is I have them take it and it twists behind like this and then folds over so that the entire top of the cleaning rod is covered. And then they can either just wrap it around like this. I have one student who loves to do this spiral thing with hers where she does this and then she wraps it round and round and round and round. And it actually works once it loosens. But at any rate, it goes into the head joint. And I do a little bit of twisting because a whole bunch of gunk gets in your head joint. We had a head joint horror story where the girl took the handkerchief into her head joint for the first time and it came out green. I might have a instrument horror story on Halloween or something, but that's another issue. So twist in the head joint, then you put the head joint down gently. You take your body and you go in one side, not all the way. Always keep because otherwise you're going to get stuck. And then you twist around, and then you do the other side. And then I don't care how dry the foot joint is, you got to establish this habit. My foot joint almost never got wet until college because I didn't have 4-hour rehearsals in high school except for marching band, and that was my piccolo, which was, you know, the silver piece of junk that the band teacher had, and you get to joke about it. Man, that thing was shrill. Okay, anyway, so you take your foot joint and you establish this habit. The foot joint is short, so you can do it all the way through. And you want to make sure everything gets wiped down. Then take your rings out of the case if you have rings. I'm going to reset my Bopep finger rest, which we will talk about in another video about accommodating for different hand sizes, etc. There's all kinds of cool stuff you can do. Flute's in her case. Here, I'll move the computer down so you can see her. Isn't she lovely? In her case, and the case is shut without the cleaning rod or cloth in it. If your case has that little slot for the cleaning rod, okay, put the cleaning rod in there. But for my girls and my guys, the rule is your cleaning rod, because all of them have cases with handles, gets tied around the handle like this. That in a knot. That way I know they actually have it even before the lesson or the rehearsal starts. It's a good way to check things, just like read checks. Some of my girls and some of my guys liked to go get bandanas from, you know, Walmart and stuff and get colorful ones. And those are fine with me, but I tell them make sure that they wash them in the washer probably 2 or 3 times before they use it as a flute rag. I don't know why, I just like it that way. And then the other thing is you do have to launder your cleaning cloth from time to time. Throw it in with your regular laundry, but do not, under any circumstance, use fabric softener. Fabric softener decreases the absorbency of the fabric, and plus it makes a little film on the fabric, and I don't want to risk any of that going into my instrument, because, you know, ew. So there you go, proper care and feeding of your flute, sitting. This is way too much information on one video, but I hope it helps. I know that we're starting with beginner flutes at this time of year. Upstate New York starts the day after Labor Day, so I have 1 more week to get ready, and I'm so excited to get my new kiddos. But I hope this helps. Please send me questions, any topics you might want me to address, and we will try to make it fantastic. I have a couple ideas for our next video, and I hope to see you soon.